last week. Oh, okay, we're live.
Yay. There we
All
go.
right, take it away, Claire.
Good morning. It's 10:03, Wednesday, July 20th, 2022. It is our regular weekly meeting of the Lincoln County Board of Commissioners. Note the historic anniversary of this state. 53 years ago tonight, 2 astronauts landed on the moon and made the very first moonwalk. All 3 commissioners are present this morning. That constitutes a quorum of the board. Next up, we have 2 recognitions, proclamations, and the first resolution will be read by Commissioner Jacobson, and we'll invite the presenters to come forward.
All right. In the matter of proclaiming July 17th through 23rd, 2022 as National Pretrial Services Week in Lincoln County. Whereas pretrial staff members are an essential part of the criminal justice system, and whereas pretrial staff members uphold the law with dignity while recognizing the right of the public to be safeguarded from criminal activity. And whereas pretrial staff members are responsible for monitoring clients while in the community, and whereas pretrial staff members are trained professionals who provide services and referrals for clients, and whereas pretrial staff members work in partnership with community agencies, and whereas pretrial staff members promote prevention, intervention, and advocacy. Now, therefore, we, Lincoln County Board of Commissioners, call upon all citizens of Lincoln County and upon all patriotic, civil, and educational organizations to observe the week of July 17th through 23rd, 2022 as National Pretrial Services Week in Lincoln County, in which all of our citizens may honor all pretrial staff by their faithful and loyal devotion to their responsibility.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Curtis Anderson, Lincoln County Sheriff.
Marie Gaynor, Sergeant, Lincoln County Jail.
My name is Jeff Hoey. I'm a pretrial specialist at the Sheriff's Office.
I'll turn it over to Jeff to start us off.
All right. Good morning. My name is Jeff Hoey. As I said, I work as a pretrial specialist over at the Sheriff's Office. Myself and Michelle Houston, she's the other pretrial specialist, as well as Sergeant Gaynor, we kind of run the pretrial program. And we're here just to kind of give an update on how the program's going since we started in 2018, October 2018. So just to kind of go over an overview, the process begins when adults in custody are interviewed in the jail when they come into custody, and we're putting together a recommendation for the judge to make a decision on their release, if they're going to be released or held. That recommendation includes a risk assessment, and all that information goes into our case management system, which is called CE Pretrial, just for your knowledge. During that interview process, we also verify the information. We're not just taking their word for it. We call family, friends, employers, things like that to verify that information that we're giving to the judge so the judge can make a well-informed decision. If that client is not released at the arraignment initially, we will go do a second look to try to identify some of the barriers that are holding them in custody and potentially make another recommendation at a release hearing subsequent to that first hearing. For example, one of the examples we like to give, if a client can't go home, their case involves an alleged victim, they live with that person. We will identify, maybe a hotel, we have a pretrial house, things like that. So just trying to answer those barriers with some sort of solution so we can get them out of custody if appropriate, and so they can move on with their case. We also meet with clients who have criminal cases that are not lodged in the jail. For instance, you can come into our program via citation. So not everybody's necessarily brought into custody. Some folks are given a citation to appear for court. We do receive copies of those citations. If they have contact information, we'll reach out to them, input them in our system. Again, ask them if there's any barriers to them getting to court, transportation, housing, if they need a phone, things like that, that would help them be successful while in that pretrial status. In our system, we do have robocall features. It'll text or call, and it also added recently email capabilities. So they'll get whatever their preferred method of communication is. We can get them a reminder for the court dates and or check-ins if that's applicable. So like I said, we do have in custody and out of custody clients. Currently, we have 619 clients. That is a mix between in custody and out of custody. We keep the in custody ones on our caseload because they could potentially become out of custody if we go to a release hearing. We do recommend to the judge levels of monitoring and also obviously if they should be released or not. And then we also have the capabilities to do urinalysis testing, GPS tracking, and alcohol monitoring through a couple different means. We have identified a number of persons cited by the courts. Some of those folks that are getting citations are failing to appear for their initial court dates. That's been one of our major barriers in the program. So like I said, we do receive a copy now of those citations. We do hand out, we've reached out to some of our law enforcement partners and given them like an information card so these folks can reach out to us, if they do have barriers, so we can make that contact. Since the opening of our program in October of 2018, we've had a total of 10,505 cases that have been opened. That's cases, not people. So some folks might have multiple cases. There have been 5,500, just about 500 cases closed with successful outcome. 3,300 closed is unsuccessful. The high number of unsuccessful is really a direct effect of the COVID happening. We were doing citations a lot more than we would typically do prior to COVID. A lot more folks are coming to jail, so we could meet them, build that rapport, and get them out with some sort of contact with us. But we have made significant efforts since COVID happened, brainstorming with our team to see how we can overcome that. And we are seeing a downward trend now. COVID's the restrictions are tapering off. We are bringing folks in a little bit more often, but we are seeing that downward trend back. So that's good news. Just for defining it, a successful closure is when a defendant makes all court appearances, all check-ins with us if necessary, and they don't break any of the conditions the judge put on them, and they do not fail to appear. Unsuccessful is if they don't do those things. Obviously, they didn't show up for a court date, or we had to report them violating one or more of those conditions. Some folks also close cases as other, and that could be there was a death before their case was closed. We've had a number of those, or the DA's office didn't file, or they dismissed the case prior to arraignment. Little overview on the house. I think that's pretty important. It's one of our major, I think last I heard, we were the only county in the state that offers a pretrial housing option. It's over on Cottage Street. We opened it in March of 2019. And since its opening, we've had 106 individuals come through while on pretrial release. We've helped out 106 people come in there. We currently have 5 down there. It's a 9-bed facility. And it's only males. Of those 106, about 60 have successfully transitioned from the house. That's 59, I'm sorry. Once their court case has been concluded, and 42 of those clients were unsuccessful. Unsuccessful means they either violated one of the, there's quite a few more rules at the house. They have to abide by pretty strict rules. And if they don't, we ask the court to put a warrant out for them, or they just left the house. So that's kind of what that looks like. And we've also helped since the program was opened. There was an overcrowding issue in the jail. Obviously, in 2017, that was our highest numbers. We had 701 inmates being released due to overcrowding alone. In January 2018, June 2018, which was right before the program opened up, we had about 155. So just to give some, and for the whole year of 2021, last year, we only had 75 inmates being released due to overcrowding. So we've helped out with that as well. And just to kind of close it out, I know statistics and everything, people like to look at them. I wanted to read just from I think it's more important is to kind of see the human aspect of it. So I have a letter, it's a 2-page letter. I'm not going to read the whole letter for brevity's sake, but I have an excerpt that I thought was really important from one of our clients. He graduated the program late 2019. And this is what he had to say. We received this letter from him. He said, Lincoln County Pretrial Services gave me an opportunity that jail couldn't provide. It gave me a chance to get to know myself, and most importantly, to forgive myself when I take accountability. Since I've been released from jail, I've been able to accomplish more than I ever thought possible. I started a brick and mortar store with my business partner. I graduated from all my treatment classes with flying colors, and we've completed a 2-year remodel at my home. And best of all, I've reconnected with those in my life that mean the most to me. Pretrial services saved my life on June 10th, 2019. It showed me that this court system believed in me and gave me a chance even with my past record. They watched me like a hawk in every move I made. That was the boost of confidence I needed. It showed me that even with everything stacked against me, that if I take accountability, you can change. It wasn't the court system's fault that I kept going to jail. It was my own doing. I was a wrecking ball, that monster to society. But that has all changed due to the Lincoln County court system giving me a chance. And he also noted that at the writing of this, he had been clean and sober for almost 800 days. So just something to leave you with. I think that's just kind of shows, what the goal is of the program. So I appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you for a very comprehensive report, and glad to hear a lot of good things are happening with this program. Commissioner Jacobson?
Yeah, I do have a question, or maybe just a clarification. So you were talking about what an unsuccessful case was in pre-trial release, and I was trying to take some notes here, but you said that if someone didn't show up to court or didn't, meet a check-in, that then they were unsuccessful. And I guess I was just kind of curious about that, because does missing one check-in really make them unsuccessful? Are they kicked out of the program immediately if they miss one check-in, or is there still kind of some ability to try to work with them through that?
Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
it's not a one and done.
Okay.
We definitely try to work with, and I got that clarification early on from
Yeah.
all the partners in the program. I don't think it should be an unforgiving one and done kind of thing. Things happen sometimes, you just miss your check-in or whatever. I reach out to it. If somebody misses a check-in with me, I do a lot of reaching out. I'll email, I'll text, I go on Facebook, I'll try to connect with this person however I can. Hey, you missed your court date, what's going on? Did you lose your phone? Did you need minutes on your phone? What's going on? So it's definitely not a one and done. It's I don't even put a number on it. It's not necessarily 2, it's not necessarily 3. It kind of depends on the person. If they've been making check-ins every week for the last 10 weeks and they missed one, and then they make another check-in, but they missed, I work with that person.
Yeah, because it can still be successful even if they miss
Yes,
one.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Same thing with, if they're ordered UAs and they come back with a UA that's not favorable. Well, you willing to go into treatment? I've got connections in the county, in the community where we can get you into some treatment options. Would you be willing to go meet with this person? If they say yes to that, well, I'm not necessarily going to report that immediately because they're willing to work on the things that are, again, those barriers.
Yeah.
So no, it's definitely not unforgiving like that. That's just an example of what could.
I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
the numbers on that you can't put a number on it. It's not 3 strikes you're out. It's
willingness.
It's willingness. Yeah.
Yeah.
We know that it's almost, especially when you're talking about behavioral health challenges, that it's going to take more than once anyhow. Some people are going to fail. I mean, and we have to realize that. I think early on when I first got introduced to this program, that was one thing that was instilled in me, is that don't just give one chance and don't give 3 chances. It's really, if people want to come back and say, give me another chance, you got to really look at that. And it's so important to be able to do that. Just read the story, does say it all, and we've had others. Jeff has done an amazing job since he's been here. Michelle and then Amy, our pretrial counselor, has done an amazing job. I think that going back to 2017, when we had this vision of starting this pretrial program and pretrial justice, I think Commissioner Hall and I were at one of the same conferences, the Justice Reinvestment, that we learned about it. And then a group of us went to training, Judge Bachar, the Community Justice Director, Susan Gonzalez-Sten, the DA, Michelle Branham, Guy Greco, all went there and learned it. I think at that time, and I know we still hear about it, that I don't think anybody thought that we could go to that training in 2017, learn about the program, and have something going by the end of 2018. I think, again, that took also the commissioners to add the 2 positions that are paid for our general fund dollars too, to make this happen. So it was definitely a partnership and willingness. And what we're seeing in the program is just, again, beyond what I ever visioned. It's working, and we're seeing it even through the COVID. I cannot imagine being a jail and hearing some of the horror stories of jails that didn't have pretrial programs that went through COVID, trying to work with all the releases. It was bad enough for us. You heard the high fail to peer rate with people that were cited because we couldn't bring them to jail during COVID, but without having that, it would have been even worse for our county. And now that we're coming back in, July 1 was kind of the reopening, I guess, is what I've kind of put it, to no restrictions on COVID. And obviously, if we have an outbreak in the jail, we need to take considerations, but really reopening the jail again. It was also the start of Senate Bill 48, which was also the bail reform, which is trying to put pretrial programs in every county around the state. We're seeing definitely some hardships initially from that, but again, having pretrial programs in place ahead of time was definitely a huge asset to do it. And I'm just so proud of the work that Jeff does for this. He really cares about the individuals. I think that's so important, and I think it really shows. Their office is just right outside where my office is. So I see individuals coming and going all the time, and just seeing the work that Jeff puts into helping them be successful and getting them to a place where it's not just about the program. It's not just about the job to Jeff. It's about making people successful. And, you know, you can look at this program any way you want. You can look at it as, again, I know Commissioner Hall and I go way back to, you know, soft on crime approach, whatever we're doing. If you want to look at it as a business decision, it costs a lot of money to keep people in jail. We want them to be successful and productive like this individual is out there. However you look at it, it's a good program, and they do such a great job at it. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And yeah, and every time I go to see you, I see the work taking place in the lobby with Jeff. So
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah,
Anything else, Commissioner?
nothing else for me. Thanks.
Commissioner Hunt?
I'm curious, you talked a lot about why, or the number of people that fail. Why do they fail?
I think a lot of those numbers, like I said, are just failure to appear to that initial court date. So if I don't have the statistics to back it up, but just kind of my anecdotal experiences. If we're not able to meet that person, build some sort of rapport with that person, you know, if they don't have, a lot of these folks that are getting sent don't have phones. I have no way to get a hold of them. They don't put the email address on the site. So there's no way for me to give them reminders, you know, just at a very basic level. So getting that face-to-face, I've seen it helps dramatically to get that person to show up to that first meeting with them. Hey man, like, I'm here to help you. Do you need a phone? Do you need, you know, a place to stay? I've had a bunch of, I won't say a bunch, but there's been some that live, you know, like in Portland, they don't have the means to come to the coast to stay the night before a court hearing. So we've been fortunate enough to have some grant funds that'll help with that. You know, you get down here to Portland, I can get, or from Portland, I can get to the coast. I just can't afford wherever the hotels cost, especially in the summer. We've been able to help them. We'll get you a hotel Sunday night. You go to your hearing on Monday, get back to Portland, and we'll keep doing that. So not having that face-to-face, I think, is, I guess, to kind of answer your question, is what I believe makes these folks unsuccessful. And that's happens a lot more when you don't bring them to jail. There's just a citation.
I think the citation, especially during COVID, caused us, and we meet monthly, we being really the group that first started, as Judge Bockhart still meets, I still meet there. And then of course we have the pretrial team that comes there, defense is there, DA's there, really. And we really look at statistics. Lieutenant Shanks has been instrumental in getting a lot of grant funding to come in to offer those phones, offer all the services, the bracelets. The pretrial counselor is grant funded. And, you know, so we meet and we have our grant coordinator comes in and really gives us a dashboard every month, what we're doing. And so we try to push the arrow in the right direction of all this. We really see COVID took a turn. We know that citations, we tried to do what we could to alleviate that, because we saw, if you go back before COVID, we saw a huge success. Everything was turning upward COVID. So we're really, those numbers are trending back now. They're just a little slower than we thought. But it is a great question. Why do people, you know, we know people come to jail, they'll you know, get convicted, serve a sentence, end up over at a directed campus shop at the end and still fail even after all that. I think it really comes down to that, the behavioral health issues, the substance use disorder, mental illness. How can we solve those? You know, you've heard statistics. You're over at the fentanyl, the opioid symposium, listening to that, how much that addiction takes on to somebody. I really think that those behavioral issues are a lot of it, you know, because we know that Jeff is doing everything we can. We meet monthly, try to improve on what we can to address those barriers. It still comes down to some willingness on the individual. Still is an individual decision on whether or not they want to be successful in the program. We just got to try to reduce all those barriers as much as possible, whether if it's substance use, try to get them in treatment. You know, we have a pretrial counselor now that is, if they have problems, can come in and talk about that before they're convicted. But it still comes down to individual and us doing what we can. And sometimes those are so overwhelming that it's hard to address. And it's sad, but I think that we really, and what I try to do, because, you know, you look at it's 50-60% of the people are successful. So the large amount that are not, but the clientele we're working with is a difficult group, and to see the huge success that we are seeing is what I need to look at too. And knowing that people can change, and there are a lot of people that are changing. I think that percentages are actually, you can look at it both ways, but I try to look at the positive that we are doing a lot of good for the ones that are successful.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think the program's been very successful. I'm interested in how we can make it
Yeah.
more successful. And you partially answered I guess my next question. How do you integrate with the behavioral health counselors or addiction counselors? Since I think in many cases, that's really the underlying issue.
Yeah, I've built real solid relationships with like the drug and alcohol, reconnections, Phoenix Wellness Center, the folks that we have out in the community. I have pretty good connections with the mental health folks across the way, and Amy, like I said, works there as well. So Amy will meet with anybody that's identified as a pretrial person, either right before us or right after us when we interview them in custody. She'll identify, this is what I feel that this person needs. If they are released to the community, I got an appointment set up, et cetera. And yeah, just building the relationships with the drug and alcohol is a big one. So meeting those, I guess, needs, getting them over. I drive them over there immediately when they get released. I'm going to drive you to Phoenix. I'm going to drive you to Reconnections. We're going to, hand off to your counselor so you can get into that treatment plan, whatever it's like. Really trying, and that's kind of only last year or so, year and a half, really built those relationships up. We've seen a huge surge in those kind of cases. So I'm trying to expand that as much as we can.
All right, good work. Thank you.
I would entertain a motion now.
I will make a motion that we proclaim July 17th through 23rd, 2022 as National Pretrial Services Week in Lincoln County.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll move now to our second resolution of the morning and invite Director Camp to come forward. In the matter of proclaiming July 17th through 23rd as Parole and Probation Supervision Week in Lincoln County. Whereas Lincoln County community justice is an essential part of the justice system, and whereas Lincoln County community justice professionals uphold the law with dignity while recognizing the right of the public to be safeguarded from criminal activity, and whereas Lincoln County community justice professionals are trained professionals who provide services and referrals for offenders, and whereas Lincoln County community justice professionals work in partnership with community agencies and groups, and whereas Lincoln County community justice professionals promote prevention, intervention, and advocacy, and whereas Lincoln County community justice professionals provide services, support, and protection for victims, and whereas Lincoln County community justice professionals advocate community and restorative justice, whereas Lincoln County community justice professionals are a true force for positive change in their communities, now therefore be it resolved that the Lincoln County Commissioners do hereby proclaim July 17th through 23rd, 2022 as Probation and Parole Supervision Week, and encourage all citizens to honor these Lincoln County community justice professionals and to recognize their achievements. We all know you, sir, but for the record, for the public, introduce yourself, please.
I'm Tony Campo, Lincoln County Community Justice Director. I just got to say that, I'm really, really proud of the fact that we have great probation and parole officer professionals in our community. We have probation techs. We have our transition housing, our tides housing that we have. We are constantly working with our individuals that are out on probation and or parole, and making sure that we're doing everything we can with evidence-based practices to ensure that they're following through with their requirements of being members of the society. We do have a law enforcement component, obviously, but it's much more than that. It's much more supportive. It's a much more supportive role working with those families, making sure that they're in compliance and following through. If you're just focused on the immediate issue, then a lot of times you're not going to be very successful. You got to focus on those bigger picture issues that they're dealing with and trying to make sure that they are, that they are going in the right direction. And that could mean, making sure they're following through with treatment, making sure that they're getting jobs, keeping their job, keeping their appointments, keeping their responsibilities. And when they do those things, we find that they're much better able to maintain, your sobriety and able to maintain the good standing within the community. And it's a lot because of our staff, the daily work that they do on a daily basis or, you know, like I say, a lot of people look at probation and parole officers as somebody who's a law enforcement agent. And like I say, it's just much, much more than that. And you know, it's because of them that they're able to be successful.
Tony, thank you. And thank you for the good work all your team is doing. My question that pops to mind is, you know, you definitely are doing a lot of good work to serve this population and protect the community, but where are some gaps or needs that could be addressed if more resources were available?
You know, housing remains to be a critical piece, especially in this county. I believe, you know, the cost of housing, we have, you know, 35 transitional beds right now available for our offenders. And, you know, trying to, you know, when we do get them up and running and they're working and they're going to work, they're able to do all those type of things, they're having a hard time finding housing. I mean, they're filling out applications, paying for that application fee, and still not able to find that housing because of the costs and you know, all the different challenges that go with that. So that's really a big issue for us right now. You know, and then of course treatment, you know, trying to get them to be in compliance with treatment, but the drug use is, you know, an issue obviously, but I think more than anything, to be honest with you, it's that transitional housing. We have a small population that are on probation and parole that are homeless, and those are very difficult. We, you know, I bend over backwards to ensure that that's not the case, but in some cases they actually, that's their choice, and you know, we're not allowing that while they're on probation and parole. We're doing what we can to try to make that as, you know, something we're not going to allow. We have them wear ankle monitors and those type of things so we can ensure that we're making sure that they're in compliance with the probation.
Great. Commissioner Hunt?
Well, I'm not sure how parole and probation relates to or integrates with, but what about the juvenile population? I mean, is there a heavy involvement there? Are the expectations different? Are they involved? To what degree?
So we have two probation staff that are doing a fantastic job there. You know, two probation officers, and of course their supervisor. They engage closely with the families. They're making sure they're working closely with the school district. It's increased a lot as far as what we're doing, as far as what treatment that we're providing with these youth, and making sure that they're following through. And like I say, we're doing a lot of home visits, a lot more home visits than what we've ever done, because I really find that that's where we become the most effective, is when we're working with those family members and you know, giving them the assistance they need in order for them to be successful.
Okay. Thank you. Good work.
Commissioner Jacobson?
Yeah, I had a follow-up. I think we all know there's a housing problem in the community. So I guess I was just curious, so like in a year, how many of your clients are looking for housing? I mean, you can like guess. It doesn't have to be like.
I would guess at least 100.
Okay, that was my guess too. Yeah. And I would also assume that besides just the lack of housing and affordability being a large barrier, that part of it too is certain people might have certain types of felonies or what have you that then make them ineligible for certain types of housing. Is that, I mean, are they experiencing that as well?
When they're applying for
Yeah.
housing, yeah, I think, you know, like I mentioned before, you know, a lot of these guys are filling out their applications and they're getting denied with, you know, I mean, they're, you know, I think they're being denied because of that background that they have.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Tony.
Okay, we're ready for the motion then, I guess.
I'll move for approval of the resolution recognizing the week of July 17th through 23, 2020 as parole and probation supervision week.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Now we move along to adoption of our consent calendar. Items that are routine or have been discussed at previous meetings. Is there any item that commissioners or staff which wish to pull from the consent calendar?
I'll move for approval of the consent calendar as presented.
I'll second the motion.
Motion and a second to adopt the consent calendar. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. It's approved. Now we move on to our one decision action item. And this would be formally acting on a request from citizens for a better Lincoln County to cancel the 2022 straw vote for the county to become carbon neutral by 2030. It was at the request of this group in the first place that we agreed to put this on the November ballot. However, we've had contact with their leadership since that unfortunately for their cause, they've not been able to motivate many people into actively working for the measure. So they have requested that we withdraw that measure from the November ballot. Discussion or?
Well, I think it's, unfortunate they didn't, get the amount of, volunteers and support they were hoping to do, but, this is by their request that we pull it off. And so I think it makes sense to do that based on the people asking us to put it on or now asking us to take it off. So.
Yeah, I'd echo those comments. I think their focus was on climate change. I think climate change is a critical problem. If I remember correctly, yesterday, Great Britain experienced the highest temperature they have ever experienced at 104 degrees or something in that neighborhood. So when you see record temperatures being set that have never been achieved before, to me, that certainly is a indication of the seriousness of the problem. I saw an article that talked about the human life, depending on humidity, about 89 degrees is the temperature upon which human life with high humidity starts to suffer. So it's a serious problem. It disappoints me that there wasn't more engagement by our citizens, but I can understand the need to cancel the vote.
Yeah, I guess the other thing I would just say too is just as a reminder that there was 2 different climate projects that we had in our ARPA funding that are still, the county is still going to work on. One is for a climate kind of adaptation planning framework, and the other is to start working on getting our fleet converted over to electric cars. In fact, I know Sheriff Landers said you would be willing to be an early adopter for us. So I know we have some local, enthusiasm with when our staff to start working on that. And so even though the straw vote's not going forward, we as a county have some stuff we're committed to doing despite that.
I'll entertain a motion now, please.
Go ahead, Katie.
Okay, I make a motion that we, trying to think of the wording here. Help me out, Kristen. Are we canceling? Because we didn't, okay.
You're withdrawing because you hadn't moved actually.
We hadn't moved to put it on yet. I know, that's why I'm struggling. We had directed you to come up with language. So what's the motion here?
I don't really think there's a decision action because you never signed a resolution to put it on.
Okay.
Well, Jerry had suggested that, just for the record, that we have this
Just-
on here.
I would acknowledge it.
But,
that
okay,
You're
so-
accepting the withdrawal of the
Okay.
application to be on.
Maybe just making sure we have a consensus to
Mhm.
withdraw.
Yeah, no further action. Okay. Move on to discussion information items. And Mr. Miller, if you could bring up my PowerPoint, please. This first presentation, I will be walking us through a PowerPoint presentation on the state homeless grant, which I received word right before the meeting in an email from our Health and Human Services Director, Jane Romero, that the funds have been deposited with the county today. So the clock will start ticking. I'll go through this PowerPoint, and then I'm also going to ask County Administrator Tim Johnson to follow up with some general comments on next steps and how we're actually going to operationalize this. Slide, please, Casey. So this is a pilot program for coordination and planning on the local and regional levels. It was established this year by the Oregon Legislature for House Bill 4123. 14 communities applied for 8 slots. We were one of 8 communities selected, and the grant is $1 million, $500,000 per year for 2 years. And Lincoln County is serving as fiscal agent and oversee the steps needed to execute the grant. We also have city representatives and the Sletz tribe at the table, as the bill does call for an advisory group to oversee the progress of the project, made up of local government representatives. Slide, please. So just to clear up some questions I'm hearing, this is not a direct services program. There's no money to directly provide shelter and services. That is part of what the bill as designed by the legislature. Next. Okay, so we're working with a limited duration, one-time grant, but this will give us an opportunity for detailed research, a thorough assessment of our current programs and services, an opportunity to craft a detailed inventory of our service and housing needs. You know, everybody knows we need more emergency shelter, transitional housing, and permanently affordable housing, but to drill down to some hard goals, hard numbers, I think will be valuable. Ultimately, one of the requirements of the state grant is that we develop a 5-year coordinated plan that will see the cities, county, and tribe working together to address these needs. You know, 10 years ago, I'll say frankly, most city officials I saw didn't believe that cities had a role to play in addressing homelessness. But I think as the problem has grown, you know, we've had good turnout at the table so far, that the cities realize that this is a problem that crosses jurisdictional boundaries, and our best chance for success is by really working together. Next, please. Yeah, as I mentioned, we've got the Oversight Committee of Local Government Representatives that is taking shape. Next, please. And I will ask Mr. Johnson to go into this in a little more detail after I finish, but the county is going to be hiring 2 part-time contractors to carry out the work, including research, developing a service model, and writing the plan. Next. Yeah, this could be a whole PowerPoint. This could be an afternoon workshop, but very high level. You know, I think everybody is aware that there is no one cause of homelessness, and there is no single solution. You know, of course, poverty, mental illness, which includes PTSD and trauma, addictions, and domestic violence are among the drivers of homelessness, but not the only ones. Another challenge, I think, in terms of carrying this work forward, especially in public forums, is I think most members of the public, frankly, have a distorted view of homelessness. They only see one visible part of the population. They aren't aware of the teenagers couch surfing at the home of their friends and their parents. They don't see people moving from one inexpensive motel to another. So next, please. One of the themes at our initial meeting was that, you know, I said, if we just write a plan and we've spent out our money over the 2-year period, this whole thing will be a waste of time, a massive failure. But if it becomes a springboard for further action, coordinated effort to strengthen existing service providers, to bring new resources into the county, then it'll be a success. Now I'm looking back there, that photo there is the 2007 Housing and Homelessness Plan that we developed in the community. And it did It did bring forward some tangible results, including a decade of Project Homeless Connect events. We became the first rural county in Oregon with the 211 information and referral service. We created 10 permanently affordable land use or land trust homes, and also created 18 units of permanent supportive housing. Those are still operated by Community Services Consortium. Yes, and I want to emphasize one more time, the only way this project will be a success is if we truly build an ongoing collaboration between the public agencies and our community partners to build a more humane and more efficient homeless response system. Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Chair Hall. In the context of the budget on this, again, the grant was $1 million. The coordination of the budget is being handled by the county and as a fiscal agent through Health and Human Services. Within the context of that, you will have a budget and will be approved brought before the board for your approval and direction. But within the context of that, the significant amount of money will be used for materials and services. Out of that amount, $300,000 will be identified for the consultant services, the 2 contracts, $200,000 to develop over the next 2 years, the 5-year strategy for the county, corresponding cities and tribe, $100,000 to work with a consultant to help stand up not only this advisory board that you participating in, but the cities and the tribe with us, but also the stakeholders and the significant amount of stakeholders that are anxious to participate in this activity, which will take a tremendous amount of time. So relative to not coming to you and trying to stand up a full-time county staff to do that, given the timeline necessary to make this happen that we've been given, we thought this was the best way to pursue it. And we join seven other counties that are similarly doing the same thing. So we're in good company. We're in contact with those folks. We're all working with one another. It's a good camaraderie. I do want to share something with you, Commissioner Hall. You might want to talk about this, is the direction leadership about taking tours in Lane County and also Multnomah County.
Right, we're having discussions among the group of taking tours to those 2 communities that Mr. Johnson mentioned. Portland is facing, as I think almost everybody knows, some really serious ongoing problems with homelessness, despite the fact that they've committed significant resources to it. Recently, there was an Oregonian article, more of an expose, looking at their recent effort where they did some massive sweeps of homeless camps and said they were going to get people into permanent housing. Well, the promise was not realized in the actual performance. Lane County has had a wonderful model for years of not only a city-county partnership, but multiple service providers. They've got everything from a supervised tent camping site overseen by the city, car camping, Conestoga huts for homeless veterans, and more recently, 2 tiny home villages that have been developed as permanently affordable housing for folks who were previously unsheltered. So that'll be part of our process as well for the advisory committee. Comments or questions from my colleagues on the board?
Yeah, I guess one thing I would say is I have actually never been to the Lane Multnomah County tour. I was supposed to go in March of 2020.
Oh.
That did not happen. So I think you have been previously, Claire. So maybe when that happens, I can come in as the alternate on the group, because I would really like to go see those models
Mhm.
at some point. The other thing I was gonna say is, back when you were talking about the challenges of homelessness, you even said it's not, a list of everything, but I think, besides poverty, mental illness, PTSD, trauma, addictions, et cetera, I think just the cost and availability, certainly in our community, is a huge issue. Even if you don't have trauma, substance use disorder, et cetera, just finding a place to rent is incredibly difficult
Mhm.
right now. So those are all kind of the questions, comments I had. I'm really pleased that we were one of the 8 communities to get this grant, and hopefully we can do some good work, and that it's just a stepping stone for whatever opportunities come next.
Exactly. Commissioner Hunt?
Yes, I would agree. I think it's a great first step. I'm glad to see that really there'll be an effort to gather some data. I think data is always a good place to start. Also think it's important, and you've noted it in your comments, that the cities and the counties will be involved in this initial step. I think when you consider the challenges that have been highlighted already, poverty, mental illness, et cetera, those people are going to need access to services too, and to be putting homeless facilities in the remote areas of the county probably isn't necessarily going to facilitate those individuals' access to those services that they really truly need. So I'm very happy to see the cities and the tribe involved. I think their involvement is critical and certainly would be a factor in locating these facilities should they come to be in the future.
Thank you. And to leap back to Commissioner Jacobson's point about the cost and availability of housing, I know someone who retired and moved out of state a few months ago, but she was in a constant struggle to stay housed, that she could not find a place, even though she had a monthly income that would support her being able to pay rent comfortably. The rule that most landlords have now is that you make a move-in deposit of 3 times your monthly income. That was impossible for her. Yeah, it will be good to have data. Through the years, I've tried to absorb a lot of data, and this number is, I believe, more than 10 years old, and I don't recall the source, but it would be nice to have things like this. For instance, it was an indication, the myth, one of the great myths is people are homeless simply because they don't want to work. And in this report, it said that of 66% of people living in poverty in this county had at least one household member working, part of the workforce. So, the challenges are huge, but I think this will be hopefully a good mechanism, a good forum to tackle those challenges and move forward in a positive way.
Well, thanks for the report.
You bet.
Well said.
Now we will go back to Mr. Johnson for a presentation on the developing state and federal legislative agenda for the county.
Thank you, commissioners. To Chair Hall's point on the memorialization of the anniversary, it was on that day, what was it, 53 years ago?
Mhm.
It was a Sunday. I was here in Lincoln County.
Oh, wow.
With my family. My mother got my family rushed into a station wagon back to Portland, where we watched it on black and white TV. And everybody was standing around in awe, trying to take photos of black and white TV to memorialize the day. So thank you for aging me. Earlier this month, I had sent you all a draft memo of a legislative agenda, which was stimulated by your direction of me to begin the joint sessions with the individualized cities and the tribes, and sent that for you to start a framework of discussion of opportunities that you may want to work with those, as well as our federal and state colleagues in terms of programs, projects, and services. Within that regard, in order to continue to move this forward, as you have directed me to begin these agenda setting efforts in preparation for the upcoming state legislative session, as well as concurrent efforts with Congress, and then subsequently our discussions with our corresponding cities and tribe have formulated this. Casey, if you would please move to introduction. So we've categorized those, and again, this is a working draft, so I don't want to cause any acid indigestion. We have economic development, quality of life, energy, housing, transportation, public works, health and safety. Within these, we have developed categories. I've reached out to the M team and asked them for their input. You'll see some of those in the breakdown in the what I call the tear sheets here, or cut sheets that I have, the individual forms that you have in front of you, one on federal and one on state. But there will be white papers, which are basically a one-page brief that will be brought before you for your review and continued editing and direction, which I much appreciate, so that when we do work towards looking at solution sets on these, we have some basis for which to begin. Additionally, one of the things that I've found to be very successful historically, at least in my career, is to ensure the fact that our elected officials, you folks, along with your counterparts, mayors and cities, councils, and the tribe, have worked together with both state and federal officials. Several major efforts that I've worked on have been to actually take delegations to Washington, D.C. with great success story. Commissioner, there was a project you and I were talking about earlier in the week relative to athletic fields. And I just completed a report. I forgot to tell you, and I will send it to you. I was remiss telling you this, but it was related to athletic fields. And I'd written this report identifying the magnitude of the expenditure to do that. Much to my amazement, as ARPA and the Infrastructure Investment Act rolled out, lo and behold, in the midst of that are monies for what you were talking about. In my previous role, employer and federal way, we took a delegation of the mayor and city comprised of the mayor and some members of the city council, went to Washington, D.C., and lo and behold, they got $12 million for conversion from grass to all-weather turf.
Out of IIJA,
Pardon me?
out of IIJA money or out of?
It was a
Specific
variety of different sources. So kudos to you for reminding me of that. I appreciate you doing that. But one of the things that I would like to recommend here today, and again, we can have this continued discussion because we're not making a decision here, is something I just call Coast to Capital, which would then get you to go back every other year to Washington, D.C. to continue to promote your agenda and find sources and move legislation accordingly. Casey, if we could go through that. First one is dealing with economic development, quality of life. There's one of the key things that we've recognized here. We were heavily dependent upon fishing, forestry, farming in Oregon. That is diversified, but we continue to need to do so and always be the guardian and steward of our economy and its diversification, and help those who are within our specific prime sectors of our economy to continue to look at opportunities. The enhancement of the fisheries, for example, is a good case in point, what we want to do there and how you want to do it. We did not demarcate anything in particular yet. I'm waiting for you to provide that direction for us and in the way of white paper so that we can pursue that. And then correspondingly, the growth of entrepreneurialism, given the fact that we are a rural community. we will work diligently in that particular area. Next slide, please, which will be focused on energy. I know that one of the things that came out of the Cascade Rising exercise that we went through, and some of the things that we've witnessed in the last 60 days is we've noticed that even when the Bonneville Power Administration is doing maintenance on their lines, it is shown the fragility of which we live by. When they make a mistake just doing the maintenance on their own line, it shuts down parts of our county, and which unfortunately also reflects upon the loss of revenue for many of our businesses, and also causes other problems for healthcare and other services in our community. So some of the concepts of local sustainable energy sources is maybe one of the things we want to work on. And you have quietly but positively identified wind energy and wave energy as possible activities, and that wind energy would be onshore, not offshore.
Well, thank you, because the heartburn was like rising up in my throat.
Sorry
Yeah.
for that. Now, you had a report that was done early in the last decade, from 2010 to 2019, that talked about wind energy onshore here. So we might want to go back and look at that, see what other exploration was at. And as Commissioner Jacobson had identified earlier, within the ARPA approval that you made, there was discussion about our conversion of electric vehicles and corresponding charging stations for both our fleet and for both of our customers. So within the context of that, let's go to the next one on housing. Commissioner Hall had just identified the issues associated with looking at types of shelter for homelessness. And as that study continues to move forward, that will probably unfold opportunities for us to look at that. Commissioner Jacobson, you have been force behind the concept of looking at workforce housing, and that is key to that. And for the commission, as you know, you still have about $3 million in the ARPA in which to address some of these issues in the county application. Next slide, please. We'll go to transportation and public works. Our public works director several months ago had informed you that we had received money through the state, which came through the federal government, for improved roads and bridge repair and replacements. I suspect he will be continuing to keep us up to date on that. Issues associated with public transportation, and specifically as it may relate to any upcoming strategies that may come out of the need with parents who are struggling with cost of childcare and also trying to get their children to childcare, may need help and assistance with underwriting the cost of our public transportation and issues associated with that, specifically in a rural area. And may I stop for a moment just to define something for you? You heard this earlier relative to one of the resolutions that are proclamations that we had. You know, the term pilot program, let me share this with you. Pilot program is a term that our state and states use. But when you get into the federal government, a pilot project, they use the following terminology. They call it demonstration programming. So you apologize. They're one and the same. It's just a little nuance that I've had to pick up on over the last 12 to 18 months, that as I've watched the state and the feds work with ARPA and IIJA and all of the things that go on, they have different categories or nuanced categories for them to
Use what sells. I'm a
That's
fan of
right,
that, yeah.
exactly. Airport enhancement, I've been invited to a discussion with the port, Newport, in the city of Newport, to discuss air service and what they're going to try to do once again. One of the things that we had talked about, and my apologies to the sheriff, even though we had talked about, and he provided great input on this document for you. We had rural electric transit demonstration program that our director of transit, Cindy Bruce, has provided with backup information on a white paper. But that would also go hand in glove with what Sheriff Landers would also do. And I apologize we probably should have also included vehicles for public safety in that. So we'll add that to this document, or these documents that we're doing, if that's all right with you, Sheriff. Again, our Public Works Director had identified assistance that was needed to enhance our Lindley Memorial Park for day use and boat launch. And there's assistance that can be found there. And then also on Brown Park, construction of 40 to 50 campsites and 10 to 12 cabins with restroom facilities, in addition to those on the site for capital improvement. Next would be health and safety. There's a whole host of efforts from childcare, youth programming, senior program. Before I left Washington State, I was engaged with the Federal Reserve, the Federal Deposit and Insurance Corporation, the Office of the Comptroller, the currency, the state regulators on banking, all recognizing that seniors have been displaced from banking because of COVID. And it probably is exacerbated because of the fact that that many branches were closed, obviously, during the shutdown. And they don't have the money to possess the computers or the handheld devices necessary to communicate with their financial institutions. By the way, seniors were also of a generation that went in and sat across from their banker to talk about issues associated with deposits, investments, and transactions. And those days have moved on. The feds recognize that, as do the state. And so they are developing a separate program, and probably would love to have Lincoln County as a rural component participating in that activity to support seniors in our community. Again, continued effort with community health assessment, substance abuse, back for funding for community outreach and mental health enhancement with the COMET team. The sheriff and public safety, we're looking for increased technology through the way of drones. And then also something very important to it is they replace the economic and physically obsolescence of Otter Crest communication building, which we could find in a variety of different sources, and I think would find a variety of active listeners, both in the state and particularly in the federal government. So if you look at the opportunities that are starting to present themselves, and I know that you would ask me if I would prioritize any of these, I think that it might be advantageous for you all to do that rather than for myself to make that recommendation, because I value all of these as very important, but I recognize that maybe you want to look at it from a couple different perspectives. One, specifically the county, meaning the county organization. Then you might want to look at it from a county-wide perspective, and then you might want to look at it from a special perspective that may be regional in nature, meaning more than one county and a team effort. So there's a couple different ways for you to look at it. But what we wanted to do today for you was to put the proverbial meat on the bone, allow you to chew on it, if you will, and look at where you wanted to take this, staying within the context of the fact that you would like a deliverable and out on the streets, working with our colleagues at the cities and the tribe later this fall. And with that, I conclude my presentation. We'll take any questions or directions you may have.
Commissioners, Commissioner Hunt.
I don't have necessarily any questions. I guess a couple of thoughts came to mind. I think on the introduction page, I think there's a bullet point probably that could be allocated to technology or broadband. I think I tried to figure out if that fit in any of the existing bullets, and I thought, well, it's probably worth highlighting. Economic development, quality of life, fisheries, I'd probably add forestry. And then I'll just say that today's the first time I've heard about the county actually going to electric vehicles. The last time I read any data on this, it wasn't clear that the total carbon impact from electric vehicles was a benefit over existing systems. So unless there's been a significant improvement in the carbon impact as far as batteries and the manufacturing of electric vehicles, I have some questions.
So we'll answer those and I'll sit with you on a separate occasion. But as you know, as an individual who has been a major investor in high performing vehicles in particular, I have been informed now moving forward that those cars are worth more than what the production of the new electric vehicles will, because of the loss of parts or the lack of availability of parts of those, because the marketplace is moving us whether we want to or not. And so our ability to maybe to begin to look at that transition in the marketplace is something that we need to do. Otherwise, we may find ourselves in a very expensive proposition moving forward
That's also a different issue.
it is.
You know, it's my concern is the carbon impact of electric vehicles. I'm not saying I don't support them. I'm saying that I don't think it's all black and white.
I don't think the decision to fully convert has been made. What we put in our ARPA funding was some money for technical assistance to look into some of that stuff. Yeah,
That sounds good.
Mhm.
I have several comments.
Okay.
And some of this we'll need to follow up on later, but under economic development and quality of life, I would also add broadband. I think that's a huge piece that needs to be added to economic development. That came up in the economic development listening and learning sessions that Commissioner Hunt did 18 months ago, which oddly enough was pre-pandemic. And then I think it became even more relevant. I also think there's a lot of money getting ready to flow through rural Oregon for broadband. Energy, I think we can talk about later. I think in a lot of these categories, including energy and including housing and some other ones, I think the need for technical assistance is a huge piece. I think a lot of times there's opportunities to build something, do something, whatever, but if you need the technical assistance to get there, and in small communities, you often need the technical assistance because you don't often have it in your staff. It's a lot harder to find that opportunity. People are looking for shovel-ready projects. So if you're not shovel-ready, you can't get the money for the project. I mean, you need the technical assistance to get shovel ready. So I would weave technical assistance through almost all of those slides. Transportation and public works, probably under road and bridge repair and replacements. I know there are several culverts that need to be replaced. I think both Don Lindley and the 40 to 50 campsites, I think that's at Brown Park. I think there's actually some other stuff with parks too. So maybe we just need a whole parks section. The other thing on transportation and public works, or maybe fit it in somewhere else, is the Lincoln County Commons project. I think that's probably a priority for us. And there is some overlap. For instance, there is a lot of youth programs that take place at the fairgrounds that would like their building repaired so they can do more of that. Health and safety, childcare, I'm really happy to see it there. It could also go under the economic slide, in my opinion. I think the other kind of health and safety thing that's a priority, and I know mental health, HHS, along with the sheriff's office, is looking at this, is a mental health crisis center, which is different than a substance abuse care. So that needs to be its own bullet point. And I think
That was a mental health crisis center.
mental health crisis center, at least I think that's what they're calling it. Is that right? Curtis? Something like that. Yeah. You can have a naming opportunity if you would like to purchase that for us, by the way. So also, I think on the replacement of the tower at Otter Crest, I was actually out there with Lieutenant Shanks and Sheriff Flanders last week. It was good to see them. And I think it's not just that they're obsolete, but also not seismically sound. So I think that's an important piece to think about, is it's not just the tower surviving, it's the equipment and the tower and the batteries and all of that stuff. That's pretty important so that we can communicate after an event. The other thing I would add, probably under health and safety, but it could go almost on its own page, is water. I think there's a huge need. In fact, I just had an email this morning and get at least 2 or 3 a week from different groups. The need for at least initially technical assistance, followed by money for actual capital projects for water in unincorporated Lincoln County. I think is growing and going to be huge. Speaking of climate change, so we have a lot of small rural systems in the unincorporated part of the county, and with more drought conditions and also just growth. We need that technical assistance to look at districts joining other districts for them to secure their water sources, for them to have more efficiency when water may have been more available. If you had leaks in your systems all the time, getting that water from the hill down to your 4 houses, it's okay, not working so much now. When we're having more drought conditions, you need to have more efficient systems that aren't losing water on their way, and also securing those systems, shoring up water rights if they're not already, and then also doing that bigger work of looking at how smaller systems can join with other systems for efficiency and availability of water. So the technical assistance on that is really big. And then eventually you would need to go back and find the money for the capital project. So I think a water page is really important. I guess just a note on, priorities. I mean, all of these are obviously very important. I have a whole different take when it comes to prioritizing things like this. And I apologize in advance to anyone I supervise who has heard this lecture multiple times already, but I really look at things less as a priority and more about sort of the art of timing. It's not so much about we think is a priority, in my opinion. It's about what's going to sell. What is the intent and interest of our state and federal partners? What do they care about right now? And so I would just assume, this is a draft now, but as we shore this up, we keep them all on there, maybe not on a prioritized list, because I think it comes down to what do those elected officials in the state and federal government care about? If they care about water, we should have as much water projects as we possibly can, through the hole for funding. If they care about emergency management, we shove as many as those projects forward. If they care about housing, we shove as much as that forward as we can. So again, for me, it's not so much about prioritization. It's more about the art of timing and having multiple projects across different sectors kind of lined up, ready to go, so that if the intent and interest is in one place, we're ready to go. If the intent and interest is on another thing, we're ready to go either way. So that's just kind of the way I look at stuff like this. So my comments.
Commissioner Hunt?
I have nothing more.
All right, Mr. Johnson, I think you've given us a great framework for this discussion. We'll continue, I think, to examine and refine this document, but great starting point. Thanks. Now we move to commissioner reports, and Commissioner Hunt, do you have anything for today?
Nothing this week.
Commissioner Jacobson, anything more?
Yeah, I would just say, kind of as a follow up to all the other kind of housing stuff we've talked about, that we are kind of off the ground and running with Northwest Oregon Works on technical assistance for workforce housing. So this was a grant for technical assistance that I personally wrote. We were able to go after this because of our Echo Mountain fire, but the technical assistance is not just for Otis, it's kind of looking at recovery holistically as a community. And so we were having some technical assistance done on specifically looking at how to fund workforce housing projects, because there is kind of already an existing structure, good, bad, and different, on how to fund low-income housing workforce or low-income housing projects. But it's very difficult to fund and get workforce housing projects going together when they don't qualify for federal credits to do that, or state credits to do that. And so that project is often going, and basically they're trying to find some models for us on how in this community we would attract developers for workforce housing, and how you fund that, what type of asks need to be made, to the state and federal government, if any, and how those kinds of projects pencils out, and what kinds of workforce housing projects you can get built. So I'm looking forward to the results of that. I think similar to the plan you're working on, Commissioner Hall, I hope it's not simply paper, but I hope it actually leads us to have some support and help in looking at how we get some of those projects actually off the ground, but without kind of knowing how some of those are funded and where some successful models are. It's hard to do. So
Okay.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. It's public comment time, and if anybody online wishes to offer public comment, this would be the time to use the raise hand function on your Zoom connection. And while you're checking that, Mr. Miller, did we have any submissions from Smartsheet?
Yes,
This
Chair,
week.
we did have a submission this week, and that is on our websites on the meeting page. Just one item this week.
Okay. Is there anyone in the room signed up for comment?
Yeah, we have Betty Kamikawa here with us today.
Okay, come on forward, please.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm here, I'm Betty Kamikawa, and I'm here representing Grace Winshaven. I want to tell you what's going on over there. This past week, I applied for funding from CSC for our hotel rooms for $350,000 for winter hotel rooms this year. As you know, it doesn't go very far. That's probably 2-3 months worth of hotel rooms for about 40 rooms. And so along with that, I found out that Project Turnkey 2.0 is happening, and they gave us a really quick turnaround time. So I'm here to ask you, we're going to apply for 4.5 million. I'm here to ask you for a letter of support for that project. It's due this Friday, but they are allowing us to turn in letters of support later if we don't make that deadline on those. But the application is due Friday. So there was a real short turnaround with meeting partway through plus writing that other grant. It's just, been a lot. But
I feel you, Betty.
yeah, it's never ending, it feels like. So we have a hotel in Newport that has been offered to us, and it's a really good candidate for this. It's in pretty decent condition as far as we know. Project Turnkey helps you. They do the appraisals. They do, they pay for all of those things. They bring in everybody to help you with it, and they help figure out if it's worth that 4.5 million that they're asking for it. So basically, I gave you the letter, what I need. I've been to the city of Newport, and they've given me a letter of support. I'm going tonight to Toledo. I've got a meeting with them anyway, so yeah. And I don't think Tim knows, I'm also Toledo City Council president. So yeah, I'm gonna ask Toledo for a letter of support too, because we all work together with the homeless. We all come together, and I've asked Sheriff Landers has already said he would give me a letter too. So that's what I'm working on right now, is trying to get the funding for that hotel, and then after that, we just need, there's money available to run a facility like that. So we would be then working on funding that.
Okay.
So.
Great. We had one very successful Project Turnkey project. I guess that goes from the Department of Redundancy Department, but in Lincoln City, where Northwest Coastal Housing acquired and converted a 41-unit motel for emergency and transitional housing, and it would sure be nice to see a second project and one in Newport.
And actually, I have a question about that. I think you're still on the Northwest Coastal Housing Board. Are you clear?
No, I
Oh, okay.
stepped back to an
All right.
advisory role.
Well, so maybe we need to reach out to Sheila, but I thought they were going after this grant as well. Northwest Coastal Housing was for Newport
yesterday, but I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah,
And it's fine. I mean, I don't know whether there's another plan for Lincoln City, plan for here.
I had heard it was in
Or
Newport.
where, and if
Um,
it's, I
but
don't know that it's the same hotel even.
I would hate for the two of you to be competing
Well, it
against
wouldn't
each
be,
other.
it
Yeah.
wouldn't actually be a problem, I don't think, because if
Okay.
it turns out it's the same place, which the owner had told
Mhm.
us that we were the only ones he was gonna offer it to. So
Okay.
I'm not sure that it is the same place, but even if it turned out to be, I think we can work together pretty well, because we can find ways to work together. We
There's
partner with
certainly a
everybody.
need for more than one
Right.
in this community. What
Right.
my concern would be is that at the state level, you're pitted against each other and
Well, yeah,
deciding.
yeah, I
I don't know
understand
that they
that.
would give two projects the
Right.
same community, but
Yeah, If it came to that, we would talk it over and decide which one of us was gonna, if we were gonna partner together and move forward, or one of us step back, or,
Well, and
I-
maybe
I-
with
we
two
know each other pretty
proposals, we
well.
have a better chance. I
Mhm.
mean, I guess that's a way of looking at it too. All right.
yeah.
Thanks.
It's a process of where you put it in and it's, steps.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
along the way, you can get removed from the steps or you
Right.
can remove yourself. So it's not a thing that's gonna be done real fast.
Well,
They
I'll
want to
reach
have the
out.
funding done, have the project going by the end of next year, the end of 2020.
I'll reach out to Sheila and get some clarity on if we
Right,
have.
because
guess we
I
could-
reached out to her right after the turnkey 2.0 announcement came and, to ask if she was going to pursue another one, and she wasn't sure at that point. I asked her to get back to me, but it's possible. Yeah, so
Okay,
be
Yeah.
good to get a verification one way or the other.
all right.
We've also talked to her about how they fund and run theirs up there, and, we're working with them anyway, so, yeah.
Exactly.
We
Good.
are in partnership with so many different groups here to try and make things happen. And the other part about this is that there is no set time limit on how long it can go from transitional housing to apartments or whatever we want to, however we want to move forward. So we could possibly have a few rooms that are available for very low barrier and maybe keep them that way for that winter housing component of people, or for, just overnight shelter for, maybe 5 or 10 rooms available for that, which is something we also need here.
Yeah.
Because we don't
Yep.
have it. So
Yep.
we're thinking of all different ways we can do it. So,
Well, I'm supportive of sending a letter of support, and I think
I
that
am
if
too.
Northwest Coastal Housing is doing it, there's no reason why we couldn't support more than one application or
Yeah, my only
project.
concern would be if there's competition, I think we want to be cautious as to our support for one and maybe not the other.
well, she would have, the way they set this up, she would have to come to you today
Mhm.
to get your letter of support, because by Friday, the application is due, and you have to put in there that you've asked for support from these entities at the very least. So I think I got her on that one. So.
Okay.
Yeah, but like I said, we work together real well,
Mhm.
and I love what she does with her group, and
Not,
so, yeah.
we need more housing. I'm just saying we all need to work
Yes,
together. all of
Exactly,
in the
us.
most
exactly.
effective
It's,
way.
I don't see any of it as competition
No.
ever. We
No.
need it so bad.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Thank you, Betty.
Thanks, Betty.
Thank you.
Anyone else signed up, Casey?
No. Nope. Looks like
Okay.
that's it.
Then.
And no one online?
Hmm?
Nope, okay.
So we are at the point of adjourning this meeting. Commissioners will meet twice next week, Monday, the 25th at 10 for our office staff meeting, Wednesday, July 27th, 2022. Both of these meetings taking place in person in this room, but public access available through Zoom. Until then, we're adjourned.